He had been at the shelter for so long that no one even noticed him anymore. Just another shadow in the back. An old German shepherd, silent and still. Every day, families walked past his kennel. They smiled at bouncing puppies, played with energetic young German shepherds, and laughed at wagging tails. But him? He didn't even lift his head anymore. It was like he already knew no one would ever choose him. His name was Rusty. Once, he had been strong, a proud German shepherd with bright eyes and a confident stride. But time had worn him down. His legs were stiff now. His fur was thin and dull. Those eyes, once full of life, now held only quiet sadness. The shelter was always noisy, barking, yelping, and visitors talking as they searched for the perfect German shepherd. Rusty never barked anymore. He just lay curled up on a worn-out blanket, tucked in the very last kennel, far away from the sunlight and the happy visitors. People didn't even glance his way. They wanted youth. They wanted energy. They wanted a future, not a reminder of the past. If the scene meant something to you, imagine who else it could reach. Like the video. Subscribe now, and help pass this feeling on. Oh! And tell us where you're watching from. Your country means a lot to us. Comment below. So Rusty stopped trying. No more wagging his tail. No more sitting up. No more hopeful eyes. Hope only hurts when it's offered again and again, and no one ever accepts it. But everything changed one day. A day that started just like all the others. The shelter opened its doors. The air filled with sound. And into that noise stepped someone unexpected. She wasn't alone. She was holding the hand of a little girl. And that little girl was about to see something no one else had noticed. Claire Bennett hadn't planned to adopt a German shepherd. Not that day. Not any day, really. She had only come to the shelter because her daughter, Sophie, had asked over and over. The kind of asking that comes with wide eyes and hopeful smiles. The kind of asking that comes with carefully drawn pictures of German shepherds and notes that said, "Please, I'll take care of him, I promise." On a quiet Saturday morning, Claire finally gave in. "We're just going to look," she reminded Sophie as they stepped out of the car. "We are not bringing anyone home." "I know," Sophie replied, her voice bright with excitement, but her fingers gripped Claire's hand tightly, just in case. The shelter was loud, just as Claire had expected. Barking echoed down the halls. Each kennel was filled with wagging tails and eager eyes. German shepherds jumped against the metal bars, tongues out, paws reaching, desperate to be seen, desperate to be chosen. Sophie's eyes sparkled as she moved from one kennel to the next, stopping to giggle at a golden retriever puppy trying to chew its own tail. Claire followed behind her, half smiling, half guarded. They passed row after row of kennels. Each one seemed louder and more chaotic than the last. So much movement, so much energy. Then Sophie slowed down. She stopped in front of a dark corner, her little brow furrowed. "Mom," she whispered, tugging at Claire's sleeve. "Why isn't this one barking?" Claire stepped beside her, peering into the dim kennel. There, barely visible in the low light, lay Rusty, curled up, silent, still. His head rested on his front paws. He didn't even look up. And in that moment, something shifted. The noise of the shelter seemed to fade away, because for the first time, someone had stopped. Sophie pressed her face closer to the kennel bars, her hands wrapped tightly around the metal. Her voice was softer now, almost unsure. "Why is no one with him?" Claire crouched beside her, brushing strands of hair from Sophie's face as she glanced inside. Rusty still hadn't moved. His body was thin. His coat was patchy. His eyes were open but distant, like he was awake only because he had no choice. Before Claire could respond, a shelter worker walked by and paused, noticing where they were standing. "Oh," she said gently, her voice lowering. "That's Rusty. He's been here a while." "How long?" Sophie asked, her small voice surprisingly steady. The worker sighed. "Over a year now," the worker said. "He's an older boy. He came in after his owner passed away. The family didn't want him." Sophie blinked. "They just left him?" The woman nodded slowly. "We tried posting his story online, put up signs, even lowered the adoption fee. But most people want younger German shepherds, puppies, ones that play and jump. Rusty just fades into the background. Claire felt something stir in her chest. Not pity, something heavier. She looked again at Rusty, at his unmoving body, at the untouched food bowl, sitting in the corner. He doesn't even look up, Sophie whispered. He used to, the worker added quietly. In the beginning, he wagged his tail, sat up when someone walked by. But after months of being ignored, he just stopped trying. The silence that followed was heavy, filling the air like a weight. Sophie knelt down slowly. I think he's still waiting, she said. Claire's throat tightened. She wanted to say something, to explain, to move on. But all she could do was stare into those tired, fading eyes, eyes that once held hope, eyes that maybe still had a little left. Sophie didn't move right away. She simply sat there, just outside the bars, watching Rusty with quiet focus. Not like a child watching a pet, but like someone waiting to be trusted. Can I try? Sophie asked softly, turning toward Claire. Try what? Claire replied, her voice cautious. Sophie extended a small hand, reaching just inside the kennel. Her fingers were tiny and still. Claire hesitated. Sweetheart, he might not come over. I know, Sophie whispered. I just want him to know I see him. Rusty didn't lift his head. His ears didn't twitch. But his eyes, those deep cloudy brown eyes, shifted. Just barely. Just enough. He saw her. Seconds passed. Long, quiet seconds, filled only by the distant barks echoing through the shelter. Sophie didn't move. She didn't speak again. Her hand stayed still, palm down, fingers relaxed. Then, the smallest thing happened. Rusty's nose twitched. He shifted just a little, his bony frame moving enough to sniff at the air near Sophie's fingertips. Not close enough to touch, but it was something, a breath of curiosity. Claire's heart clenched. It wasn't much, but it was more than she had expected. The shelter worker watched quietly from a few feet away. He doesn't usually react, she said softly. Most days he just sleeps. Won't even take treats. Still crouched beside her daughter, Claire felt something stir deep inside her chest. The ache of connection, barely formed, fragile, fleeting. Sophie turned slightly toward her. He's not mean, she whispered. He's just scared. Claire nodded slowly, her eyes never leaving Rusty. He didn't move again, but in that small, uncertain sniff, Claire saw something she hadn't seen before, a flicker, a thread, a sliver of hope still clinging to life. Claire stayed quiet, her eyes locked on the frail body curled up behind the bars. There was something about Rusty that unsettled her, not in fear, but in sorrow, a quiet, aching kind of sadness that sat just beneath the surface. The shelter worker stepped a little closer, her voice softer now, respectful of the silence between them. He doesn't really respond to people anymore, she said gently. He spends most of the day like this. Doesn't bark. Doesn't eat much. We check on him, make sure he's okay, but he rarely moves unless we ask him to. Sophie glanced up. Is he sick? No, sweetie, the woman replied kindly and honestly. Not exactly. He's just very tired. Claire's arms folded instinctively. Her brow furrowed as she looked again at the full, untouched food bowl in the corner. The blanket under Rusty was too thin for the hard concrete floor. She wondered if he even felt cold anymore, or if he had stopped noticing that too. What happened before he came here? Claire asked, her voice lower now, hesitant but genuine. The worker shrugged slightly. We only know bits. His file says he was surrendered by family after his owner passed. Beyond that, we're not sure. Claire didn't ask more. Somehow, she already knew enough. She knew what it felt like to be left behind, to keep showing up, only to be overlooked. And looking at Rusty, it was like seeing that feeling alive, breathing, fading, waiting. She knelt beside Sophie again, and together they sat in silence, not to fill the space, but to honor it. Rusty didn't lift his head, but his heavy, hollow eyes watched them, and though his body stayed still, something had shifted. For the first time in a long time, he wasn't alone. I'd like to meet him, Claire said quietly. The shelter worker blinked. You mean outside the kennel? Claire nodded, just for a few minutes. There was a pause, then a soft sigh. Okay, but I should be honest with you. Rusty hasn't gone outside in weeks. We try to walk him, but he usually just stands there, won't budge. Claire exchanged a glance with Sophie, who gave her a tiny, hopeful smile. Let's try anyway, Claire said. The worker unlocked the gate slowly, stepping inside with practiced care. Rusty didn't move. His eyes followed, but his body stayed curled, still as ever. The leash was slipped gently over his neck. No resistance, no reaction, as if he didn't even feel it. Claire and Sophie waited just outside the kennel, watching in silence. Come on, buddy, the worker coaxed. Let's go for a walk. Nothing. Then Claire stepped forward and knelt beside the entrance. Her voice was barely a whisper. Rusty, it's okay. Sophie crouched beside her, her voice bright and full of something that hadn't given up yet. We'll go slow. You don't have to hurry. The leash grew taut as the worker gave a gentle tug. And then, so slowly it almost didn't seem real, Rusty shifted. His legs trembled as he pushed himself upright. His body shook from the effort. Each movement was hesitant, like every joint had forgotten what it meant to carry him forward. Claire gasped softly, covering her mouth with her hand. Rusty took one step, then another, then stopped. That was it, just 2 steps. And still no one spoke, because for a German shepherd who had forgotten how to hope, 2 steps were a miracle. Rusty stood frozen just beyond the gate of his kennel, legs trembling under his weight. His breath was slow and uneven. He didn't move forward, but he didn't retreat either. It was like he was caught between 2 worlds, the one that had broken him, and the one he wasn't sure he deserved. Claire crouched down to his level, the leash loose in her hand. You're okay, Rusty, she said softly. We're not going to rush you. Sophie stood a step behind her mother, whispering, You're doing great, Rusty. Really great. The shelter worker watched quietly, arms crossed loosely over her chest. This is more than he's done in months, she said, her voice filled with surprise. Rusty shifted his weight. His paws barely scraped the floor as he tried to steady himself. His cloudy eyes flicked from Claire to Sophie, then back again. He didn't look hopeful. He looked unsure, like he was trying to figure out what came next, and if he was allowed to want it. Claire's gaze never left his face. He's been trying to survive, she said quietly to the worker. But no one's given him a reason to try living again. The woman hesitated, then nodded. Senior German shepherds are hard, she said. It takes patience and a lot of heart. They don't always bounce back. Claire looked down at Rusty, her chest tightening. Maybe they don't need to bounce, she replied. Maybe they just need a soft place to land. The worker blinked. Are you saying? Claire stood slowly, still holding the leash. I'm saying I want to take him home. Sophie let out a small gasp. Really? Claire looked at her daughter, smiling gently, then turned back to Rusty. He may be old, he may be tired, but he's not invisible. Not to us. The shelter worker exhaled, a smile tugging at the corner of her mouth. Well, let's get started on the paperwork. Rusty didn't understand the words, but when Claire knelt again to meet his eyes, something in her voice made his ears twitch. And maybe, for the first time in a long time, he let himself believe that this might not be another false moment. Maybe this time, someone really meant it. The car ride was quiet. Rusty lay curled up in the back seat, his frail body resting on a folded blanket Claire had brought from the trunk. He didn't whine. He didn't move. He didn't panic. He simply lay there, eyes half open, breathing slow and shallow, as if unsure whether any of this was real. Claire glanced at him in the rear-view mirror every few seconds. Each time, her heart ached a little more. He looked so small back there, so tired, so fragile. Sophie sat beside him, legs folded, hands in her lap. She didn't speak either, but every now and then she leaned forward just slightly, making sure Rusty was still there, still breathing, still okay. When they finally pulled into the driveway, the late afternoon sun had turned soft and golden. Claire stepped out first, circling around to open the back door. She crouched beside Rusty and whispered, "We're home, buddy." Rusty lifted his head slightly, his ears twitching at the unfamiliar scents. He didn't move, but he didn't shy away either when Claire gently reached under his chest to help him out of the car. His legs wobbled as he stood. He hesitated. Then, slowly, he took a step forward. The small fenced yard was quiet. The house was cozy and calm. A bowl of fresh water sat on the porch next to a new German Shepherd bed that Sophie had picked out. Claire opened the door and stepped aside, giving Rusty space. He paused at the threshold. No metal bars. No concrete floors. No barking. Just silence. He turned his head and looked at her. "You're safe now," she whispered, and Rusty stepped inside. The first thing Rusty did wasn't lie down. He walked, slow and unsteady, past the water bowl, past the soft bed waiting by the fireplace. He wandered through the quiet house, sniffing the corners, testing the silence. His paws made almost no sound on the hardwood floor. Then, without warning, he stopped in front of Claire and gently rested his head against her leg. Claire froze, her breath catching in her throat. She lowered herself to the floor, her eyes level with his. Her hand found its way into his coarse fur, stroking him gently. "You're home now, Rusty," she whispered. Behind her, Sophie knelt down and carefully wrapped her arms around his middle. Rusty didn't flinch. He didn't pull away. He let them in. That night, Rusty curled up on the German Shepherd bed by the fireplace. His body finally rested. His breathing was soft and deep. His tail moved once, just a slow, lazy wag. But it was enough, because for a German Shepherd who had been forgotten, he had finally been seen. One little girl had asked, "What about him?" And in doing so, she changed everything. Rusty wasn't a broken German Shepherd. He was a soul who just needed someone to believe in him again. And now, after so many days of silence, after so many nights alone, he wasn't waiting anymore. He was finally home. Stories like this are more than just words. They're reminders of what still matters. Love, loyalty, hope. If you felt that today, subscribe, like, and let's keep spreading what the world so desperately needs.